here. So for the most part, I have either goat or lamb or pigskins in the selection. I will be sewing on my, gonna span the camera, on my Kenmore and not on my industrial walking foot. So I'm still kind of debating the myth that leather cannot be sewn on a commercial machine, which is furthest from the truth, because you can. I'm using my rotary cutter along with the cutting mat underneath to cut out the leather. And if you do not have a rotary cutter and mat, then it is safe to trace the pattern piece with a pin on the wrong side of the fabric or the leather. And then I'm cutting out my lining as well, using the same rotary cutter and mat. But if you don't have access to that, then please feel free to trace around the pattern on your material with a pencil or pen or tailor's chalk. And don't forget to cut out your tabs. You're going to need 2 pieces, 2 for the leather and optional 2 for the lining. So I have the front and the back along with the 2 tabs. And then I have the coordinating lining to go with it, which is just a 100% cotton canvas fabric. So it has some structure to help hold up the lack of weight that we have from the actual hide. And then also, if you're feeling that it still may need a little structure, then you can add interfacing to the back of the body of the clutch. I selected a brass number 5 zipper, which you may have these in your local retail store like Joann's. And then again, you may not. Hobby Lobby, I know they sell brass zippers as well, but most of the time these have to be ordered. Maybe have to cut down your zipper. That is a possibility if the zipper is too long, which obviously this is very long for this width of a bag. So I am going to have to cut it down, and I'll explain where. So I just kind of use my eye to go about cutting it down. I will, for the most part, have it zipped up, and then I'll just put it alongside parallel, that's the one, parallel to the actual opening of the bag. So from beginning to end is about right here. So I can go ahead and cut that off, because then I will need to prepare the zipper. Here we are with part 2 of the zipper explanation. So, I've cut them down to where I can assume that the zipper will go from and to and open and close. So when I grab this zipper, I know that there's a part of where the tab is going to be in the back and then where it's going to be at the front. So I have to basically remove the zipper teeth from, I would say that's probably like 5/8 of an inch that I will be removing. So if you need to grab your measuring tape or ruler to try to figure that out, but according to this pattern, that if you're planning on using the pattern that I provided, that's probably about 5/8 to where I'm going to remove the teeth from the end up into where I'm going to attach my tab. Keep in mind that the more teeth you remove, the more tab you'll have exposed. All right. So this is a strenuous process, but if you're lucky enough to see how you can just pull the teeth off like that, but it kind of gets a little crazy because then, you have to pull out your Incredible Hulk strength, your Wonder Woman strength to remove these teeth, and then these little pieces just kind of end up on the floor, and then you stepping on them. But you see how it's basically pulling teeth is what we're doing. So all right, so now that we've taken quite a bit of the teeth off, the front of the zipper as well as the end or the back of the zipper, we can go ahead and prepare ourselves to sew our tabs on now. What we're going to do is we're going to attach the correct side of the leather to the correct side of the zipper. And when I lay those face to face, I am going to prepare to sew 1/4 of an inch across this way, across the zipper. So when I line this up, I know that my stitch line is going to fall right here at about 1/4 inch away from that side of the tab. And I'm going to place a clip here, and then I'm going to move to the other side. So I have that in place. That's the back of the zipper. So the front is going to be the same, but as you can see, there's a little gap there, how it kind of spreads out. So I'm going to pull my zipper down a little bit and try to keep these level to where one's not higher or shorter than the other, but they're pretty much level with one another. And I'm going to apply the same technique, whereas I take my tab and I'll lay it correct side to correct side of the zipper, so face down basically on the correct side of the zipper, and I'm going to gauge where a 1/4 inch is going to fall from where my needle is placed to the end of the actual tab. So that's going to be right about here. So that's a good place, but I'm going to use my binder clip to keep it together for me so I can get behind the sewing machine. And I also wanted to do this to kind of give you a preview of what it is that we're doing. So that is our zipper, and once we sew the tabs, it'll look something like this. In addition to the zipper tab being applied, this is totally optional, but previously I did cut out 2 tab pieces in the lining material, which was that canvas. And if I didn't want this area to be exposed in the inside of the bag, which you know you're not going to be able to see that anyway, that's why I say this step is optional. You can also put a tab on the opposite side while you're sewing the zipper tab for the body. While you're sewing that at the same time, you can be sewing a tab for the lining. So when you do sew the tab, you kind of sandwich these pieces in together for the zipper. So there's the correct side of the zipper, and then there's the wrong side of the zipper. So that lining tab can be sewn at the same time, and I'll go ahead and clip that in place along with the original tab. And then once you've sewn your half or your 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I can just kind of show you what that may look like. So there's the top of the bag, and when you open it up, and you'll see this on the underside instead of this. All right, so I'm getting prepared to sew our leather clutch. So what I'm going to do is install my walking foot attachment, and we'll be able to sew right through this leather with a breeze. Before we get started, or before you even get started, you want to make sure that your machine and the needle that you have installed and the stitch length, which you'll adjust, you want to make sure that these materials you're about to sew can handle that, or your machine can handle these materials. So my first tip to you is to make sure that your needle is at least a size 14. In some cases, you might be able to get away with a size 12 needle, just depending on how thick that the materials are when they come together. Because keep in mind, when we do our test here in just a second, we're going to be sewing 4 plies. So it's 2 times 2 at one point that we're going to be sewing all 4 pieces together. So we need to make sure that our needle can handle that. And then the other tip I wanted to let you know about was adjusting the actual stitch length. So standard, when you turn your machine on, it's at about a 2.2, which I don't recommend at all. Even if I weren't sewing leather, I would never use a tiny stitch like that, because when you have to go remove the stitch, if you made a mistake, it's going to be difficult, and it could even tear your fabric if it's a delicate fabric. And same thing goes with the skins, because it is flesh. So the smaller that length is, the tighter that stitch will be, and therefore it'll be actually like cutting the skin because the stitches are so tight. So what I always recommend for leather is to increase your stitch length to at least a 3. I would just start at a 3. If we were able to sew a lot thicker leathers, then I may increase it up to a 3.5. But 3 is safe for me. It works for the leathers that I do sew on my commercial machine. So those were my tips. The needle size, definitely make sure it's a 14, maybe a 12, and make sure you adjust that stitch length to a 3. I'm going to make sure that it can go through both of these at once without any issues. I'm going to check my top thread and my bottom thread, which is the bobbin, and I'm going to let that sew through and then pull it out and see what we have. So that looks pretty good, and then the back, that looks really good too. So if it weren't okay, this would have jumbled up somehow. This would have jumbled up in the, I know it's a little hard to see, but it would have jumbled up as well. But it looks good. So now I'm going to fold it over. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, because when we get around to that zipper crossing, we are going to be going over 4 plies at that time. So before we even go there, I just want to make sure that my machine is prepared to sew 4 layers of this. Sounds good to me. Let's see how it looks. All right, so that was the stitch that I just performed here, and the back looks equally as good. All right, so we're ready to go. I'm excited. Here is our zipper that was lying in wait. So I have the correct side tabs. They're being held by my binder clips, and when I actually do put this under the needle, I need to make sure that that needle is going to fall a 1/4 inch away from the actual tab. So that's what I've allowed for, and that's what we'll go ahead and do now. And no back stitch is necessary, only because it's going to be involved with another seam that's going to keep it secure. All right, so there is my 1/4 inch. So now you can see where we're going with this. So there's the top side of the zipper, and then we actually included the lining side of the zipper, which is optional. All right, so the next thing I want to do is, you can, if you think it's going to be too bulky, you can, oops, sorry for the shaky camera here, but this is all I got. So you can go ahead and trim away the extra bulk carefully. All right, and then we can top stitch the tab so that it stays securely in place. And this is also optional, just depending on what your need and want is on your end. But I think it makes for a nice looking finish. And I'm actually going to put it in this, put the tab in this position on, because I'm basically approaching it from the opening side of the zipper and not the end of the clutch. So I want my needle to do a nice top stitch on this side. So I'm just going to move my needle over to the left as far as I can for this. And I'm just going to go ahead and perform a top stitch. And there is the top stitch. All right, so now I'm going to repeat for this side. And I'm going to grab my other lining tab and make sure it's in position right here. So I'm going to pinch and flip it back to this side. I like sewing on the leather side just in case I need to control or prevent something at the last minute. At least it's on the side that's visible, that I can see. All right, so with my needle in this position, it's going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that tab edge. And this is, if you didn't figure out, the reason why we removed the zipper teeth, so we would not have any problems passing over the zipper, because there's no teeth there up until that point. All right, so now I can fold this back. Actually, I'm gonna trim the bulk, right? And then I am going to put those together and make sure my thread's out of the way. And I'm going to, again, top stitch, but I do need to move my needle back over to the left side to get a nice top stitch. Okay. All right, so there we have our zipper with the tabs. All right, so we are getting close to a finished product. We prepared our zipper with the tabs, and now we are ready to install the zipper to the actual bag. So you have your front and your back, and then you have your 2 pieces for lining. So zipper, it doesn't matter which way it's facing, as long as you have predetermined that there will be no correct front or correct back. Either side is basically, both sides are the same, so it doesn't matter which way the zipper's facing, so that's totally up to you. But if you had a direct side that you want it to be placed on the front, then just know that a zipper always zips open from left to right and then closed from right to left. So this will always be the beginning or the front of the bag. So that being said, this is going to be the front of my bag, and I am going to lay down my zipper, but we're going to sew correct side to correct side, and at the same time, so we don't have to repeat our work for the same application, we're going to sew the lining together at the same time as we install the zipper to the body of the bag. So that zipper is going to be sandwiched in between, and once that's done, we're going to sew across all the way, and then we'll be able to have our zipper installed to the front of the bag along with the lining. All right, so in my previous explanation of installing the zipper, I failed to mention the actual zipper pull or the zipper head. Let's kind of move that to the center, so then we can start out nice and smoothly, because if we don't, then once we reach that point, there might be a little like odd place to where the needle is forced to try to stay in a straight line, but it can't because of the bulk from the zipper head. So if we start in the middle and we know that we're approaching the head, we can adjust by putting the needle in the down position, and then we can either slide the head down forward a little bit more, or we can pull it ahead to where we've already sewn. And then also with the tabs, just make sure that the amount of tab on each side is going to be exactly the same. Therefore, meaning this whole zipper piece is centered on the actual body of the bag. So one tab won't be longer than the other, but just make sure that this length is the same as this length from the tab to the side of the bag. So make sure you adjust your needle to where it's going to be suitable for the side zipper you have, that it won't be too close to the zipper teeth, but have enough room to where it can zip and unzip comfortably, and also to make sure that your needle is placed to where the actual top of the bag or the seam has enough material to grab to be able to turn correct sides out once that time comes. So basically just make sure it's kind of in the center of the tape placement. All right, here we go. So I'm still at a 3-inch zipper, or I'm sorry, 3-inch stitchling. And let's go. And then I'm kind of just, as I go, just making sure that my zipper tape stays in place and that nothing's sliding as I go. Ooh, that's terrible how the camera's shaking. Okay, so we're approaching almost to the end of the bag. And what I'm going to do, because I know we need to get around the head of the zipper, I'm going to put my needle in the down position. I'm going to raise my presser foot, and I am going to maneuver underneath the lining to get the zipper pull out of the way. Now, in my case, it's a really big zipper head, so I'm just going to actually pull the needle up so I can get that zipper head past that point. So as you can see, I did get it out of the way. And then pick up where I left off. So there's the first half of the clutch bag. So as you can see, our tabs in place, front to back. Our zipper is fully functioning, and our lining is also in place. But what I like to do, just because I'm a perfectionist and I like nice looking things that I make, I want to make a top stitch along the entire side of the front where the zipper is located. So it'll be nice and flat and crisp and tailored looking and not handmade. Or homemade, I should say. It is handmade, but there's a difference between handmade and homemade. So these are just one of those tips I'm giving you to kind of make sure you have a quality leather product. Top stitching is always nice. So as I prepare for my top stitch, I really don't have to worry about this, because as you can see, there's a clearance between the edge of the zipper foot and where the needle head is, and the teeth for the zipper, not needle head, zipper head, and then the teeth for the zipper. So I don't have to worry about maneuvering to get that out of the way. But what I do want to focus on is making sure that my lining piece and my leather piece are actually flush with one another. So they were cut from the same pattern, so they should be in the same position. And by doing that, it helps to flatten out this seam. So as I approach where the needle is going to fall, I want to make sure that at the bottom of the clutch, these two pieces are flushed with one another. So that will allow for this part to flatten out on both the body side and the lining side. All right, and my stitch length is still at 3, but you know, this is an area where you can increase the stitch length to maybe a 3.5, 3.5 if you want to, which, you know, I may go ahead and do that because it is a top stitch, so it's basically a decorative stitch. It does serve a function as well, just by giving a more a nice tailored look at the top. So we'll do this for both the front and the back. All right, so we have the front piece ready to go, and now it's time to join the front piece with the back piece. So let's see my pattern. Yeah, so I'm good. So I just want to make sure the direction of the print wasn't upside down. So it looks like it is going to be correct, placed this way. So correct sides together. We're going to do the same thing as we did for the front. So we want to make sure that our back piece now is in line with the front. So that means if this is lining up properly, at the same time it's connected, or assumed to be connected to the zipper, then everything will fall into place. So we got to make sure that that is done and that our piece is not slightly over to this side or over to that side, because that's the no-no. So we want to make sure it's right on top. And I'm going to swing this around so you can see this side. These pieces are sticking together too, so bear with me as I get adjusted. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up now. So as long as I know that these pieces are good, I know that I'll be good when I start to sew across here. And at the same time, I want to add my lining piece, and it will also be in line with the other pieces. So now when I'm ready to sew, which I want to approach it from this side, if I kind of just go back and check, make sure we're good, these pieces are lining up good, then I know that, well, see, I want to get this out of the way too, my zipper head. I'm going to pull that out of the way. And then I know that I can start to sew across. All right, so I changed my stitch length back to 3.5, so I'm going to make sure that these pieces are flush. And then I am ready to jump back in the game. And so you can kind of see what's happening here when I peel back that back side. All right, now everything all together. Okay, so now I'm going to move the zipper head up and out of the way and come back where I left off. Don't forget your top stitch. So now the point is to close up the body and then the lining. So we're going to start with, but make sure that you actually open up the zipper first. So these two pieces together, these two pieces together, but what we're going to do is line these up, and then this part is going to fold like this. So when that does that, then we have our lining, which does this. Whether you choose to trim off the excess of the tabs now or later, it's all going to go back to removing bulkiness from the sides of the zipper. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to sew zoop, zoop, zoop. So I am going to start with my lining. I'm not sewing the entire bottom of the lining. I'm going to indent in or give myself a head start around this corner. And I am going to use, let's see, a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I have to move over just a bit my needle. And I can go ahead and just back stitch here. And then from that corner, I'm going to pivot and come down this side of the lining now. Going over this area right beside the zipper may present itself as a challenge for you, just depending on your machine and what it can handle in regards to the weight of the materials that you're using. But you can prevent any sort of headache by using the precaution that I used earlier by cutting away some of the bulk in the tab area. And then also, if you are using a leather that doesn't bend so easily or fold easily, then you may want to, after the seam is sewn, you may want to get a rubber mallet and kind of mallet or bang out that seam area so that it's nice and flat before you get to that stage where that bulkiness is beside the zipper. So now's the fun part, and that's turning the bag correct side out. Before we do that, we do want to make sure we clip our corners, just so when we do transition to the correct side, there won't be bulk in those areas that we need to be nice and flat and smooth. And then also sometimes if I know that this area is a little bulky, I'll go and just trim a little bit more from that area. Same thing here. Okay, and I'm ready to see the surprise inside. So now that I've spent time pushing out my corners, I am ready to close up the lining on the inside and basically just folding it back about 1/4 of an inch. And I am going to pin it and then go back to the machine and perform a top stitch to close everything up.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we're done. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed walking you through the steps of making your own handmade leather clutch. Now, I do appreciate your subscription along with your likes for my video. And I appreciate you stopping by my other social media outlets to say hi. And this video has been brought to you by MPP Boutique Patterns.